This is a video on showing you how to perform the identity property of multiplication. This goes along with your notes, your piece of paper that you have. So as you watch this video, please fill out your notes. At the bottom of the front page, go ahead and pause this video and write down all three of these expectations for goal, requirement, and process. Press play when you're ready to move on. Okay, on the inside, on the left-hand side of your sheet, we have the applying part of it, where you have negative 1/2 divided by 1/4 times 1 divided by 1/10. So the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to apply the identity property, and we're going to actually rewrite the problem, but only we're not going to include the multiplication of that 1. Okay, so we're going to rewrite it without that. So we have negative 1/2, and I'm going to just keep it as a division problem for now. The only thing that's changed is that I did not put the multiplying of 1 in there, because we know that anything times 1 will be itself. Once we apply the identity property, now we can actually go ahead and apply the multiplicative inverse. Okay, so every division problem will become multiplication. However, do not forget the rule that if we change it to multiplication, we have to take the inverse. Okay, this becomes 4/1, and this becomes 10/1. And again, this is multiplicative inverse. Okay, let's go ahead and let's do the commutative property. Let's rearrange them like 4/1 times 10/1 times -1/2, just to get more comfortable with the commutative property. For your associative, go ahead and keep the same order, but just add the parentheses in there to show our groups. Okay, now we can actually solve it. 4 times 10 is 40, that's 40/1. Bring down the negative 1/2. Multiply straight across, you got negative 40 over positive 2, which means our answer is negative 20. Okay, make sure you get all this down in your notes before moving on to the practice section. Okay, on the other side, we have practice problem number 1. Let's go ahead and apply the identity property by getting rid of that multiplying of 1. So rewriting the expression without that is actually the identity property. Next thing we're going to do is change that division sign. But when we do that, we got to make sure that we take the reciprocal. This is the multiplicative inverse property. You guys can go ahead and solve it if you want to, but I'm going to go ahead and get as much practice with the commutative property as much as possible. And since there's only 2 terms up there, it makes it an easy switch. So that is the commutative property. Let's go ahead and solve it. 4 times -5 is -20/1, which is -20. Okay? Make sure you get all this down before going to the next problem. Number 2. We don't see any 1s in there multiplying by 1, so we're going to start with the multiplicative inverse property. Every division problem is going to get changed to multiplication, but remember the rule, okay, what's affected when we do that. So we're going to keep the 5/6, change this division to multiplication, but this number right here is the reciprocal, okay? Becomes 2/1. Now we're still multiplying by 1/2, and then we come to another division symbol, change it to multiplication, but 6. Here's where we have a big issue. A whole number 6. This whole number 6 is technically 6/1, because that's how we get 6. We take the 6 and divide it by the 1, and that's how we get the whole number 6. So if we just replace this with that, okay, and pretend that that was our original number, we actually have to take the reciprocal of this number. So flip that number, and it becomes 1 over 6. That is the multiplicative inverse property. Now, do you guys see anything like right here in the middle? You guys see anything that deals with the math term that we've been discussing here a lot lately? If you said reciprocals, bingo, that's the answer. So I see 2 over 1 times 1 over 2, and I know that when I multiply those together, I will get 1. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take advantage of grouping here and showing that I know what grouping is for the associative property. And I'm just going to put this inside the parentheses and label. Okay? I'm actually going to simplify here to show what happens with those reciprocals. All right, so 2 over 1 times 1 over 2 does become 1. Now that you see a 1 in the expression, now you can actually perform the identity property. Okay? All right. I'm actually going to go ahead and do the commutative property again. Just switch them. Take advantage of whenever you can do these smaller properties because it's that easy. Now we can actually go ahead and solve. 5 times 1 is 5. 6 times 6 is 36. And this is our answer. Make sure you get this all down before moving on. Okay, last one. I see a 1 in there, so we have to perform the identity property. Go ahead and keep everything the same until we're ready to move on. Okay, so rewriting it without the multiplication of 1 is performing the identity property. The next thing we have to do is change the division to multiplication, so we need to do the multiplicative inverse property first. However, there's an additional step here. We have to change that mixed number into improper. Okay, so the 5 times the 1 is 5 plus the 3 is 8. So negative 8 over 5 is that number as improper. Change the division to multiplication. Now, don't forget, we have to take the reciprocal of the following number. So we have to put down 3 over 1. Okay, again, take advantage of that commutative property. Make sure you get as much practice in there as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and just switch them since there's only 2 terms. And I'm actually going to multiply straight across now. 3 times a negative 8 gives us negative 24 over 5. Well, 5 can fit into 24 4 times, but since the 24 is negative and the 5 is positive, that means my answer is going to be negative. 5 times negative 4 is negative 20, and there's 4 left over. So negative 4 4/5 is our answer.